I'll start recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third
Awesome.
Thursday. Um,
Hi, Tiffany. Welcome live. Lauren said right before we let you in, we have Tiffany. You're like our tried and true, always here with us. So thank you for being here. And hi to everybody who's watching this later in our Death Folks community. And welcome to Dr. Aditi Sethi today. It is, oh, more people are coming in.
I'll let her
Really a
in.
pleasure to have you with us. We look forward to all of these, really, because Mackenzie does an excellent job of curating guests. But I've been looking at your name on the calendar for a few months, and I'm grateful that you're here with us in general, and also during this week. That's a busy week for everybody. So thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time and presence with us and your storytelling.
Such a joy. Thanks for inviting me.
All right.
So, if you guys don't know who this wonderful lady is, there's two film. Well, I don't know if I should go into the Ecstatic Last Days yet, but I was going to go into the is it called the Center for Living? Wait, the Community
Center
Center
for
for
Conscious,
Conscience.
Living and
Center
Dying.
for
I'm like, there's
Conscious Living.
CCL. Yeah.
You got it. Center for Conscious Living and Dying. You got it.
Yeah, Center for Conscious Living and Dying in Asheville, North Carolina. It is based off of the Omega Home kind of outline. If nobody has heard of those before, you might be able to talk a little bit about that. But it's pretty much it's a non-medical community-based place to come and die. Um, which a lot of people don't have access to and or don't have, a safe space to die, which is really unfortunate. And we all here in this space know how beautiful and meaningful the dying process can be and death. And you created a space to hold all of that. So, so grateful for you being here today and the work that you've done and the Last Ecstatic Days, which is the ultimate kind of love story of somebody who has a terminal diagnosis. And, that sucks. We all know that. That sucks. But he turns it around to like, yeah, but life's beautiful. And here I am. And I don't know what's next, but I have a feeling it's going to be pretty cool. And he met you, and you kind of stepped into the role of a death doula for him. Um, so anyways, I'm talking more than I should, and we'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such an honor to be with you all today. Um, I've had the privilege of connecting with you both in the last few months. Um, so I will share a little bit about that journey with Ethan. And the topic for today is saying yes to a stranger. And in reflecting on that sentiment or that action, saying yes to a stranger, there's so many ways you can interpret that, literally, metaphorically, symbolically. And what comes up for me in this moment to share is that, here in Asheville, North Carolina, as some of you may know, we are still experiencing the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and its impact on our communities. And in this death space that we're all familiar with, we are comfortable in some ways, or we are developing our comfort level with uncertainty and the letting go of so many facets of our lives and being, or the people that we serve, their lives and um, their love, their loves. And this hurricane, the aftermath of the hurricane, the post Helene impact, feels very similar to um, the dying journey and experience. And Aaron, we spoke about this in one of the talks we did together. But what I experienced after Helene was that people were saying yes to all the strangers that were showing up. Our neighbors who we maybe had just said hello to in passing became friends. And there's this beautiful opportunity in a crisis, which death is. The death portal can be, is more often a crisis-driven response to death than not, and that's why we're here to try to shift our approach to death. But witnessing people say yes to each other, to showing up vulnerably, to showing up honestly in community, is really one of the blessings of saying yes to a stranger. And I'm going to speak today about saying yes to a stranger in the context of end of life care and community supported death care. Because my background is as a hospice palliative care physician, and I worked in a 26-bed inpatient hospice facility for 10 plus years. And um, though people came to me as strangers, there was definitely a um, understood contract with folks that were seeking my service, right, and our hospice program service. And it's sort of there's a duty, there's a responsibility that comes with the role that I played and do play as a hospice doc. So it's a little different. It's not so much having the unexpected show up in your life and saying yes to that without not knowing where it's going. In the hospice medical setting, it's pretty predictable, right? But it is still, they're strangers, but they're not in a way. There's sort of a set of qualities of somebody coming into that level of care and that model of care. And so when I had the experience of being presented with an opportunity with this young man, Ethan Sisser, who's 36 years old. He was 36 when I became aware of him. Saying yes to him as a stranger changed my life. And though it was in the context of his end of life journey, it was very much outside. I could feel, yes, we're in the medical model initially, and then when I was presented with roadblocks to supporting him to have the death that he wanted, I kept saying yes, you know. And some might say, why would you risk your career? Why would you risk everything to say yes to this stranger? And that's a valid question to ask all of ourselves, like, what is it worth? But if opportunities present and we can lovingly say yes to the unknown, I can only speak for myself. Magic will happen, can happen. And that is what I'd like to share a little bit about, that journey with you today. And the outcome of caring for him was that a whole community of people gathered around this young man who didn't have a lot of support to have the death that he wanted. And by everyone saying yes to a human being who we all agreed was worth saying yes to, that precious sacred human life and his dying journey was worth saying yes to, is what created that extra layer of support and ultimately that dignified, loving, communal death that he wanted, that he couldn't quite find in the medical model, partly because it was during COVID. So I'm just going to share Ethan Sisser with you for a moment. Can you all see my screen? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
This is Ethan Sisser.
It's a great
And Aaron,
picture.
have you all seen the movie? Did you see The Last Ecstatic Days? You all have.
We've all
Okay.
seen it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'll give you the backstory then. That's great to know. Yeah, I'm grateful for. So the story is that you've all seen it, but my version of it is that a friend of mine, Jojo, had been following this being, this young man, on social media, TikTok and YouTube. And Ethan was diagnosed with a brain tumor in October 2019, and was admitted into the hospital system in Brooklyn at the start of the pandemic, really. And so he was pretty isolated and lonely, alone, I would say, during that time. And so he turned to social media to share his cancer journey, which ultimately became his dying journey. And Jojo had been following him and all his, talks about smoothies and cold plunges and all the things, and then chemotherapy and all of the modalities he was pursuing. And I'd heard his name mentioned once or twice, but didn't have time to hop on any kind of platform, which I tend to avoid. Getting better. I don't know if better is the word, but you know what I mean. I'm getting more acclimated to all of it. But And then fast forward, Ethan left Brooklyn to be with his father. His parents were separated, and he came to Charlotte, which is about 2 hours from Asheville. And um, at that point was told he was dying, and he was admitted because he was getting weaker and falling. He was admitted to an inpatient hospice facility in Charlotte. And it was there that he posted on his platforms that, I'm told I'm dying. I really would like to call in a support system, but I don't know. I don't have a tangible support system yet. And Jojo heard that call. So again, Ethan was sort of a stranger to Jojo. When I think of a stranger, someone unknown, someone outside of our immediate family unit or community, somebody that we're unfamiliar with, when I think of a stranger. Um, and so he was very much a stranger to Jojo, other than the social media persona, right? Because it can be a persona and not the full picture of a human being's way of being. Um, and Jojo saying yes to what his knowing was about this man, that this man, he called me, he said, this brother needs our help. So he was listening, deeply listening. I think that's part of saying yes to something. If you can say yes for the wrong reasons, and that's not going to get you anywhere, out of guilt, blame, shame, over sense of duty and responsibility that is outside of the realm of self-care and honesty, beyond that, if that makes sense. So there's lots of reasons we could say yes, but when you deeply still your mind and your being, kind of like you do, hopefully at the bedside of someone who's dying, and you just are really present with what is, then you can really hear what is yours to do. That's something I've asked myself always when I'm confronted with these opportunities, is this mine to do? So Jojo felt his was to try to get help for Ethan. So Jojo called me as a hospice doctor in Asheville, community organizer, um, I would say lover of death, but not quite, the lover of caring for people who are dying. And then Scott Kirschenbaum, producer of films, director of films. And Scott, interestingly, this is where I started paying attention to the flow, being in a flow state, being just paying attention to the signs, the synchronicities, the serendipity. Scott, a week prior, had just started working for Jessica Zitter as a consultant. Jessica Zitter is a well-known palliative care doc. Do you all know her? Yeah, she's in the Bay Area. And she did a film on Netflix called Extremis, wrote a book called Extreme Measures. So she talks about the conveyor belt of the healthcare system that we find ourselves in sometimes, or people we care for do. And I had seen her speak on the first End Well stage in San Francisco. I flew out there 2017. And I remember seeing her and being like, wow, this woman's a powerhouse, and just admired her from afar. I didn't think anything of it. But when I heard Scott had just started working for her, and that when I was just noticing that, I was like, okay, that's interesting. And so Jojo said, hey, he wants to die in community. So he called me in and then called Scott in, and he said, and Jojo said, Ethan wants to film his dying process when he can no longer film himself. So again, to Scott, he was a stranger, but Scott really resonated with his Jewish heritage and his youth, and was also intrigued by his willingness to share something that Scott was terrified to talk about, which is death. So again, tuning in, paying attention, is this mine to do? I think Scott felt a deep resonance after talking to Ethan. And so at that moment, it was, again, baby steps, not jumping to action, but really listening and pausing. My first next step would be, what does Ethan want, right? Like when somebody asks you if you all are in this realm, are you all death doulas or death workers in some way? Okay. So, if the daughter of the elder parent calls you, to tell you that this is what the mother needs, you probably want to go, if the mom has capacity, go to the mother first to get a sense of what she wants. And you're probably familiar with that. So that my next step was to talk to Ethan. And I just some images of Ethan. So every step of the way from then on was just a matter of listening, responding in a way that felt in alignment with what I could bring, what was mine to do, And we ended up, so this was I think this was in Brooklyn. But we ended up, as you know from watching the film, it seems like, bringing him to Asheville, to the inpatient unit initially, where they declined filming. They said filming could not occur in the facility. That was after multiple conversations with legal, risk, marketing, HR, all the players in this big corporation that would have reason to fear, or want to be cautious with any kind of documentation of what happens behind closed doors. And they were all for it until last minute when they felt it was too risky. And the reason being, what I was told was something negative about hospice could be leaked. And I thought that's an interesting thing, because Jessica Zitter is an advocate for end of life care education. Like, she's not going to make hospice look bad.
Right. It's
Um,
really kind of the opposite.
right.
But I
It's
can
just
understand their fear, like that it could
right.
be seen otherwise.
Right. And this, mind you, this was in a climate where our hospice program, when I started, was a small nonprofit, then was bought by a bigger nonprofit hospital system. And then when we were talking about Ethan's care, a for-profit entity bought the system. So they were new to hospice. It was all about, yeah. So at that moment, um, again, it was just really me, Scott, the director, and the hospice team. And so here we are. Um, I went to Ethan and I said, Ethan, this is a situation. We can film you on using your iPod or whatever, not iPod shows you, iPhone. We can still do streams, like streaming from here, but they won't let us get the film crew in. And so he said, I said, what, I don't know how I said it, but something about, what is it worth? Like, what is it worth trying? What would it mean to you to try to move you from this safe place where you will have a comfortable passing transition, um, in order to film this? Like, how important is it to you? He's like, it's worth every penny I have, which is not much, but it was in his way of saying, let's do this. It's worth everything. And so that moment again, I have a choice. Do I say yes to my fear of this corporation not wanting me to do something? Because I did have fear. I was like, what does it mean if I discharge him? Um, and what does it mean if I say yes to this seeming stranger and risk something? Because that's what my intuition's telling me to do. And there was not much time, to respond. So I just followed my heart, and we got him to a facility. I discharged him from our hospice, and I became his death doula. And the other hospice program, which there's like some competition, um, they took him in, and I didn't have to be the medical provider, and I could just show up as his death doula. So that moment, when I was clear in my own being that this is what I was to do, I put out the call to people in the community, and the outpouring of love, the willingness to show up for this man, because of a recognition of our, I think, what I believe is like our shared humanity. When you really show up in this way for another human being, especially in reaction, this is COVID time too. So we had been so isolated. And to have someone so vulnerable, so open-hearted about their dying journey, that's oftentimes, again, behind closed doors and private and isolated, to open this opportunity for others to come and serve, really inspired people and showed us that there is a yearning for this kind of connection, for showing up for strangers in this way. And here he is. This is his view from the home that a friend of mine was renting, and opened it up for him. And it was just a beautiful transition. You guys have seen a lot of this, I guess, in the film. And then just being able to honor him in the way that he had lived his life, in the way that he wanted to die, with ritual and ceremony and music and candlelight. I mean, it was just beyond imagination, really, what opening our hearts to possibilities and to creativity and, to love could do and create. Not to mention all the things that have followed since then, but just the experience of caring for him alone in the immediate time period, was just exquisite. And just everybody showed up with their gifts, saying yes in their own way. Um, and he had a green burial, and you've seen that. And his mantra, he had a um, saying or mantra. I'm embodied and I'm empowered and ecstatic, just as I am. And that, at first, when I heard it, I thought, what in the world is he talking about? And I call it the Ethan journey, as it went on, it became very clear. This man, he knows what's up, like he's definitely connected to parts of our spiritual being, our spiritual side that I was just emerging into. I was kind of coming to understand the power of being embodied, fully present in our physical form, empowered to be who we're here to be, and then the ecstasy that comes from that. It's pretty miraculous. So yeah, there is the movie, as you know, and then CCLD, the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, emerged. Um, well, I'll say how it emerged. Let's see. So saying yes to Ethan, um, I was really clear that I was saying yes to a part of me that was wanting to be birthed and to emerge. And I knew that, and I've known it. If I go back in time, I felt that little sense that there's something more I'm supposed to do. I mean, I could have easily, trust me, it was so easy in many ways. Worked my simple corporate job, came home, had so much balance. I never brought work home. I had a great work-life balance, I could have easily stayed there because it was rich and wonderful. And there was just this knowing. And when the opportunity to say yes to Ethan showed up, it was like, okay, I'm being asked. This is something to pay attention to. And so as he was taking his last breath in the room next to me, I got really clear. It's time for me to put my notice in, not knowing what the heck I was going to do and trusting it, which was also unusual for me. I'm very linear, methodical, everything's planned out. This was nonlinear in a receptive, accepting space, the masculine, feminine, if you will, however you want to look at that. Definitely a different approach to creation, creativity, and purpose. And so the center, what happened was during the Ethan journey, everybody who was saying yes to the stranger was so inspired and so activated and in love with not only Ethan but each other. And there's this communal experience of death that people are so hungry for, I believe. And they kept coming up to me saying, "What are you going to? How are we going to do this for each other? Can we just buy a house and start taking care of each other?" And um, those questions kept emerging during the journey, and I was like, "Time out. Let's just get through this." Um, but it became clear to leave my career, put in my notice, and then I just opened up to spirit and followed the breadcrumbs, if you will, and that led to lots of connections, lots of communication with people, and a benefactor hearing about the vision and falling in love with it and supporting it. Um, and that led to us finding this beautiful property that we now have or we're able to use, and a community that has rallied around care for strangers in a way that I never imagined was possible, and in a way that may be part of the medicine for our times. It is part of the medicine, especially with our aging, with our elders, with our aging population, with people who are in our modern world deemed to not have much to offer. There's a place now people can come and serve and reflect on their mortality and reflect on what it means to be in community, which is not always easy. It's a very vulnerable place. Um, and practice for death on a regular basis, death of our expectations, our identities, our ideas of who we are, all in relationship to one another and to the care of those we serve. So, yeah, I love that. The idea of saying yes to a stranger. That came in. Brent is in the film. He's an active member of CCLD now, and he knew Ethan briefly before I met Ethan. And he says in the movie, "Thank you for saying yes to a stranger," because that's what I did. And so I love that was the topic of today's conversation. So thank you. I'll leave it at that and just open it up for questions, thoughts, reflections.
Thank you so much. I find you so grounding and inspiring, and you just really hold this beautiful combination of like wisdom and grounded energy in the way you present, but so much knowledge and so much power. So thank you for sharing your story with us. And thank you for saying yes, knowing how much was on the line. I'm sure that, like you said, that you didn't have a lot of time to work with that and it was heart-centered, but it had you recessed into your mind very much. I'm sure that there was a lot of fear in there too. Like that's not an easy choice. It was a kind of a life-changing choice, clearly. And I hope that we
Yeah,
see more. Yeah, go ahead. Go
a
ahead.
risk, right? A risk that I
Risk.
was willing to take because
And that
it
is where
felt
the
like the right thing to do.
And I think that that's where the magic happens. I think that is the recipe. When I look back at my life too, in smaller ways maybe than that, that like saying yes when there's risk, but you know it's right anyway. That's the magic. That's it. So
Yeah.
my question is, Lauren and I have had many people over the years come and say, do you have any clients that would let us film them, for just similar, wanting to share the message of death doulaship and what death can look like. And it's hard to find clients typically who want a camera in their space. So why do you think he was the opposite? Why was he so willing to show us his orientation, so willing to share this? Where most people, even if they have maybe been sharers throughout their life, death is so vulnerable. We get, oftentimes we feel really inadequate and weak and diminished and ugly even, right? And so we don't want that to be filmed. Like, what made him say yes to that?
Mm, I think there are probably many reasons. Um, my sense is, something about Ethan that I learned after. I only knew him 2 weeks, which is still amazing to think about because he really was a stranger in that way. Um, but though my soul knew him, when I met him, it was like, I feel like, what's going on here? Um, so he had done, I think, 300 or so ayahuasca journeys. Who knows if that's exaggerated? But he had been deeply connected to spirit and the mystery of existence. So I think probably from a young age, for all I know. But I know he was a yogi. You see him in the film doing yoga moves that are just like mind blowing. His command of his body, his physical body. Um, he was a massage therapist, so deeply loving and caring of others. He was adventurous. He did the belly dancing in India. I mean, I don't know anybody else on the planet that may have gone to Bombay to learn belly dancing, and the fact that he captured that is also unique. Um, and his connection to nature and to Mother Earth and to um, spirit through the plant medicine realm. And I think all of that combined probably contributed to less fear of death, I would imagine, more willingness to be vulnerable, an awareness of the interconnectedness of all of us, and a willingness to share something that he knew people were terrified of. So, like a deep act of service. Plus, I think his generation with smartphones, I didn't even have a smartphone. When in the film, you can see my flip phone. It's hilarious. Um, and, I just, that generation, he's, 10 years younger or so. I don't know how many years now, but um, yeah, I think that combination of comfort with being seen as well and the way technology connects us versus me being like, um, I think that combination, yeah, it's a good question. I love that question
Yeah,
because it is vulnerable. It is
it is. It's a gift.
mysterious.
Service is the right word for it. It's a huge service to be willing to show that. Yeah, grateful for him
Mhm.
for it.
I do think that
Yeah.
that's a pretty valid point though, too, that it is younger people who are like, hey, like this is really important and it's going to happen to all of us. And I have this opportunity to share it. And I do think that there is something like, because I was born in 1984 too. And so I was like putting myself in his shoes and like, how would I do it? And I was like, yeah, I would probably want my story to be told too, because it, there, something about still having joy for life and understanding that life is precious while dying is kind of the gift. And I don't want to say that people who have lived a long life don't understand that, but I think that there's a lot more, there's many more layers in a very elderly person who is dying versus a younger person who may be like, I got to work through my shit. Like I'm doing this plant medicine, I'm doing this stuff. And so I think too, it's like a calling in a way for younger people to show like you can be well so that when you're dying, you don't have to have all this sludge on you too. And like witness this. Look at how beautiful and like even just you talking about it is like, there's no words for what it was, but
Mm.
it's available to us. And so being brave enough to show everybody this is available to you. I'm not trying to put down the elderly again, but there's not as many people who are like bravely able to stand into that power at that age because of life. Life is, weighed down on people. And so I think it makes sense, but also it's just so amazing that he said yes. Yeah.
And the younger
Yeah.
generation, they are the mental health generation. They care more about mental health than any generation before them has. I mean,
Mm.
even things like they're drinking less and
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm so happy to see it trending in that direction, but particularly with the vulnerability around death and the sacredness, that's just it, right? That's really what he was showing,
That's
the
it.
sacredness of
That's it.
life, which is the point.
Yeah, and letting us in. I think everyone who served, and that's actually translated to. I'm seeing that now in the center as well. The the reciprocity that's there. Like in healthcare, when we show up, like it's a very not maybe this is a simplistic way of thinking about it, but it's more transactional. I'm here to give you, insurance is paying us. It does have that, like I'm here to serve quality. I'm not expecting anything in return, even though I get so much, even in that healthcare setting, I receive so much. But there's something about community death care that we are so aware of the reciprocity and we're open to it and we're ready to receive it both ways. And it's just powerful. So everybody that serves in these settings so far, almost everyone I've encountered receives so much, and
Oh, yeah.
it's just such a blessing. So yeah, so the after Ethan died, I started doing research because I hadn't had time before. I had three kids, little at that time, and just would go to work and come home and do my thing. So started researching, and I came across the social model for hospice, which is a term we're not using because people are already so confused about what hospice is. So to add another type of hospice social model, which is really just community supported death care, I started researching that, and that led me to find the Omega Home Network, which is a network of community supported homes around the country. Are you all familiar with that, Tiffany and Elise? Okay. So,
Well,
and
I was going to say, I don't think
oh,
everybody here is familiar. I am very, and
okay,
that's like
okay.
my new heart passion, but definitely please talk more
Awesome.
because
Yeah,
it's
sure.
so inspiring.
Yeah. So during the AIDS crisis up in New England, mainly in New York, um, individuals, nuns, and others opened their homes to people that didn't have the hospital to die in, or their families kicked them out. So there were these men that didn't have a place to go to die, and they opened their homes, allowed them to die there, rallied their community to support them. And those homes sort of over time formed a network. And it's called the Omega Home Network. They're all nonprofits. They all contract with a hospice program, so it's not reinventing the wheel. Um, they're not all volunteer led. Some are volunteer led, some hire CNA, RN support, nursing support. And they're often 2 to 3 beds, but in some states, depending on regulatory requirements, they can increase. There's one in Oregon that has 12 beds, and so it varies. Um, but it's just a powerful. It's an offering to a community that I think again serves not only those who are dying and their families, but the people that get to serve in that way. Um, One friend of mine in Santa Fe had said, after feeling into the center, what we're doing differently, he said, after volunteering for one of these homes for a long time, what I'm starting to realize is that we're still pitying those who are dying. Whereas what you are doing here is embracing dying as a sacred journey and experience. And I think there is still a shift that we're still moving towards more of that piece. Like it's not the worst thing that can happen. It's intense and it's painful and there's sorrow and there's grief, but it's going to happen. So to label it as the worst thing, it's almost like you're setting yourself up for a negative experience of it, you know. So so I don't know what we're doing here, but I know it's the conscious living part of our title is also a big part of what we are doing. And um, that, could be defined in so many ways. Like, what does conscious living mean to you, And what does conscious living mean in relation to caring for someone who's dying or in reflecting on your own death? Those are questions we're asking. So,
So how many volunteers do you have, and what do volunteers do in these kind of centers?
yeah, so we currently have probably about 300, not all active. We're reevaluating, kind of reassessing. We paused after the hurricane, so hoping to open our doors again. But we need more direct care volunteers, so we're actually opening to the wait list of, I think, 250. So we'll onboard about 100 more. Yeah. So we have two paths. There's the direct care path, people who want to serve, because we're trying to be all volunteer led. So meaning no medical. We contract with hospice, or hospice comes into this home like they would your home, personal home, but we provide the 24/7 caregiving support, which includes medicine administration, changing personal care, all that stuff. So signing up for being a direct care involves all that here. And again, state by state, you'd have to look at different regulatory requirements for that kind of care. But because it's free to those who are dying, and many of these homes have a sliding scale or they're no charge, um, we don't have to be licensed or regulated, which is such a blessing. It gives us a lot of freedom. So there's a direct care path, which there's a lot of onboarding and preparation and to learn the skills to be present with people. And then there's this what we call vital teams path, where we have a plant watering team. So people who are introverted that just want to come and water the plants in this beautiful home, they come. A sanctuary team, which cleans the house, and all these different teams, 20 teams, property man. It's really amazing, and then we have an event space, so there's a lot of events and programming. Again, everything's slowed down a little bit, but yeah, it's a beautiful community.
Ugh, well, I want to be a part of it, and I'm sad that I don't live there. And I also
Come
wonder,
visit.
as you talk about, the number of volunteers and the range of their duties, not just direct patient care, if it attracts a lot of people who are kind of there to do grief work, right? If they're there to do gardening or to do something that's not direct patient care, there's so much grief work in showing up and serving other death.
Yeah, I think several people that have come have recently had partners die. And I think they're drawn to this, for those reasons, just to be in a space where they can cry and grieve and also serve others. And yeah, having experienced the death of two very close people in my life this year, people don't know what to say or how to be. And so it's really refreshing to be in a community where I might just start crying and it's not a pathologic thing, it's not, it's just talk about my dad, I'll start crying, and it's like to be in a place where people can just be with that is such a blessing, such a gift. And I think people yearn for that, you know, once they have experienced the death of someone close.
Yeah, creating space for death and grief is such an underserved. I mean, it's so underserved when most people assume that they have to die in a hospital still or an assisted living type situation. And so having more and more and more and more of these homes pop up in the United States is part of how we do have death acceptance, because now we're changing it from the worst experience ever that we have been telling ourselves as a society to, oh no, like, have you been to one of these? It's so beautiful and they can do all that. And when it becomes that normal conversation, you said, what did you say? Open your heart to the possibilities at the end of life. Like, that is what people aren't doing still. We are very closed off. It's hard to open our heart because when we say that, we're also saying, well, then I'm opening my heart to the honest truth that the person I love is dying, Like, we just don't want to. So many people have been not taught that it's okay to cry and that they don't have to apologize and that it's totally normal and okay. Like, we always say you can't apologize for crying in any of our classes.
I
But
love
it's
that.
like, would you apologize for laughing? No. So why
Mm-mm.
do we always have to apologize for this emotion that comes from love, you
And
know?
grief is not
Beautiful.
pathological.
Right. Even if I'm crying, 5 months out,
Right, even if you're past
for
the
the rest of
deadline
my
that we're
life,
supposed to have now.
the 3 days.
No deadline. Sorry, guys.
No, no.
No, and we all understand it because we're all in this, kind of same space, of understanding. Like I liked the way that you put it. If we look at it, as the worst thing that could happen, but it's an inevitability for all of us. Like, what are we setting ourselves up for? And so it's reconciling that there's one way in and there's a few different ways out, but there's essentially one way out. And like, how can we make it as beautiful and ritualistic and ceremonial as possible? I still struggle with expressing that kind of an idea to like the average person in these spaces. We're all like, yeah. But lately I've spent a little bit more time outside of my death doula world. And when people ask me what I do and I get into these conversations, like, don't get me wrong, a lot of people think it's very beautiful and, share their grief stories too. But I think that message is hard for folks until they're in the space where it applies to them. What do you think?
Yeah, and when I left my career as I knew it, my father was but my parents were both a little skeptical, of
Oh.
course, and fearful of how is she going to make a living. And it wasn't until my dad was a recipient of this care that our whole community, even my brothers and everybody, got it. This is why. This is the what. Like, of course. And so you're right. It's so unfathomable and ineffable that you really can't know until you're in that field with a community. I'd love to share some images of that if you're willing,
Yes,
so I can
please,
go there. I
please
know I'm
do.
jumping around, but um, let's see if I can find it first. Because it just speaks to the mega home and it'll show you some other things that I think, and sometimes showing versus telling, right? It's powerful, these images of my dad. Let's see, here we go. Can you see that screen now? Okay.
Thank you
So
for
just,
sharing your dad's story because I
yeah,
know that this
oh,
is still not,
it's
it's still
still
very
fresh.
fresh.
Yeah,
So
that's
thank
my
you.
dad.
Yes, thank
I
you.
gave this talk for the Integrative Oncology Working Group. So some of it's more medical, but yeah, here he is with my mom, like the love of his life, and my kids, the three kids here. And let's see if I can. So, and he was in the ICU. He had had an unexpected fall picking flowers from this rock ledge at his house and hit his head. So he had a traumatic brain injury. And he was a neurologist, like a movement disorder specialist, and he traveled the world. So very well known brain doctor and loved the brain. So it's very ironic. But he was in a coma for 16 days and absolutely no meaningful response. And luckily, he had let us know what his wishes were always. He talked about death since I was a kid, which is probably why I'm comfortable with it. Um, but when it became clear he wasn't going to stabilize or have any meaningful quality of life, we extubated him, and he didn't die in the hospital, which we thought he would quickly die after extubation. And so 2 hours in, we just thought, we're going to take him to the center and um, see what happens. It could have been hours, days, we didn't know. But here is the backyard at the center, and a rainbow came out as we approached the center. Apparently, I was oblivious because I was so focused on him. But here's my daughter and his other grandson, my brother's son. So the fact that children could be present, they weren't allowed in the ICU. That was a big plus. And this is the view from the sanctuary, the backyard. And the ICU was, we brought ritual to this ICU, we brought music, but to come outside and to be in nature during this period was so profound. And that's the view from the back. And then the kids, once he died, they got to do artwork on the path, and they got to, you know, openly grieve and openly express their love with people who were bearing witness. I think that's the beauty of being in community too, is to bear witness to one another. They called him Bapu. So that I think that's all I wanted to share. Just those images to show you, yeah, just the energy of that time, and it captures it,
I'm so
the
sorry
sacredness of it.
for how unexpected that was to have to bring your father there. Like,
Mm.
what a pain. What a pain and what a blessing that you had that space at this
Right.
time.
That's it. That's it. I don't know how I could have done it without this community. I think that's the thing. You never think you're going to be needing this level of support. I think we're all wanting this kind of support.
Yeah.
Otherwise, something in us is drawing us nearer to it.
Can I
whatever
ask
that is.
a personal question about
Anything.
that time for you?
Sure.
When that was happening, because it was unexpected, were you able to jump into presence and be present, or do you feel that you kind of leaned into the community and were just going through the motions?
Hmm. At first, it was just I kind of separated from the community. You know, the 16 days he was in ICU. I was so with the family and just responding to the kids and, just being really present with my brothers and their friends coming to visit and the reality that life is not going to be the same, even if he makes it through this. My dad is a huge presence. It wasn't going to be the same. And so we were just, yeah, I was very present with the emotions, but I would come in and out of work a little bit, the center, and I felt very free to be myself, which meant sometimes just like wailing, sometimes having my shit together, and other times just like I can't, function. And yes, I was just present with whatever was. And I still continued to do what I felt called to do without people saying, "Hey, you shouldn't be here," or "Why not cancel that meeting?" I'm like, "No, I really want to be here." And so it was nice to have that freedom and that the openness to what was even in the community. And then when he was dying, I was completely I was the recipient. I didn't feel responsible. I felt like, and interestingly, months before, I said I really want to learn how to receive love more. And I absolutely got that lesson. And I received so much.
A gift from
So
your
yeah,
father that you
yeah,
didn't
it
know he
was
would give
indeed.
you, really. Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah. Thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you could feel safe enough to just show up however you needed to be, and that you had
Hmm.
cultivated a community that understood that without needing explanation around it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think about back to our original topic of saying yes to a stranger. I mean, for so many people in this community, my father was a stranger, in many ways. They loved him through me because and respected him, just like I would your parents who brought you into the world. But other than that, they didn't really know him. But the tender, loving care that every single person showed for our family and my father, including the after death care team, that's another team to help prepare. We helped bathe him and change him, but they took care of all the ice changes and so we could just be present. And they did it with so much love and care. And so that what is possible when we say yes collectively to a stranger? Whoa, watch out, world.
Mhm.
It's incredible.
It is.
It's
So the
incredible.
after death care team, that's some death doula work. Do
It
families
is.
come in a lot of cases and participate?
Help. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We invite them to. Not everybody's ready for that,
Yeah.
or has the support they need. And some people that come to us don't have family. So we'll do that for them.
Mm.
So beautiful what you've
It
created.
is. Oh, yeah, they're welcome anytime.
Thank you. I'm coming.
We have some Airbnb rooms and yeah,
Those views, I just kept saying, oh my gosh, to be able to like those views to whether you're the person who's dying, but more so the people who are grieving and the volunteers. And like even just looking at those photos, I felt
mm,
lighter and grounded and like, okay, this is a space that I can cry and like just look at the vastness of this
yeah,
beautiful place that we
yeah,
get to be in right now and this very special and sacred time. So I had one question.
sure.
Your dad's a doctor, you're a doctor. Are many
Hmm.
other people in your family doctors as well? Like, did they always see death as very medical? And so coming
Hmm.
over to
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
the
I would say
also,
50%.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
not a lot of his family friends are doctors. I know maybe 25% of folks that were here. There were a lot of people in and out during his vigil after death care time. And I'd say maybe 25, one out of four were in the healthcare field, whether nurses, doctors, and they were blown away, blown away. They're like, I want to do this in our town, whether they'll do it or not, I don't know, but cities,
That's
Atlanta, other places, so who knows? It is inspiring
that
to
is so
people
inspiring. Yeah. And I mean,
when they,
it's so beautiful.
hmm it is.
Uh,
Yeah, it is.
So do you guys open like a vigil type space for 24 hours after death, or is it just up to the families, or how do you work with that? Because
Yeah.
if there's only, you said two or three beds?
That's downstairs on the ground floor.
Like,
Very cool.
obviously, there can't be a waiting list because people are,
Right. Yeah, that was my question. Like, how does admission work?
So far,
that, yeah.
we haven't had a wait yet, but
Okay.
Okay.
actually haven't opened to 3 beds yet because we just haven't had the support. So I'm hoping we can do that by spring. See how
Okay.
it goes. So far, it's worked out. Um, then upstairs, we have a parlor that we bring the body to, and they can lie in on or the other room if there's too much going on. So,
And that was going to be my other question is that's still not common to most people. I did a home funeral once for a younger guy and it really was like creeping people out to think like, oh, he's in his house. Like he was only 21. And then after 2 days at home, they were like, oh, I don't want to let his body go. Like this was so
That's what
beautiful.
happens.
That's what
wow, yeah,
happens every single time.
That's what
But
wow,
happens.
again,
But
I'm
people
just
don't
curious.
believe it until they've experienced it.
right.
Yeah, like how the medical setting type folks were like, you want us to come where to do this viewing? It's, or were they all comfortable and fine with it?
It varies. It's so,
Yeah.
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 I think when my dad first came, one time he came to the center, he was showing his friend CCLD, and my kids were running around, and there was somebody lying in on her in the parlor, and I just remember him commenting like, "Oh, this is how it ought to be," like he was happy to see. And yes, my uncle he was bringing to tour. It's like this is very strange, what's going on. But then certain people know either they've in India, for example, they've seen this before. It's just they know that we've lost it. Even actually generations around in the mountains, like they say, when I was a kid, we were doing
Yeah.
this, and then we've lost it for the last 50 years. So I think there's a remembrance that happens when you
Yeah,
are exposed
absolutely.
to this.
That's so
Definitely.
true. I mean, that is so true in our experience of watching people step into doulaship and then coming back and saying like this is in my bones. I know how to do this. It's
Hmm.
literal. Yes, it is because we were all participating in this not very long ago. It's been community care for
Right,
so long.
right.
Yeah.
I've been like sitting with this reality of how many generations have been on this planet, you know? If you really sit and think about like there's a podcast, it's called the Emerald Podcast, and I'm not a big podcaster, but y'all know it well.
Opal was just talking about that, one of our
Yeah.
people
Oh,
here.
nice. And there was one on fire, and fire is an element that I've identified with all my life. And my dad's spiritual path was a sect of Hinduism before idols or branched off, and it's really connection to the divine directly. The Vedas and fire and music are like the way. And so for me, and fire is very prevalent at the center. And so this one podcast that he did was on fire. So I just started listening to bits and pieces. But he talks about like how long we've been sitting around a fire. Opal, thank you. What does she say?
That I have to listen
Oh,
to.
yeah, that's awesome. See, there's nothing. We're so interconnected. No
I
separation.
know.
Welcome to the flow. Um, and he talks about, okay, so imagine this is how long we've been sitting around a fire. And he says, go back 1,000 generations. Because my dad's death has really made me think about like this life is freaking short.
It's so short,
It
man.
was not
It's
long
so
enough. It was
short.
only he's 71. Come on, like,
So short.
and I know others' lives are cut shorter, and so it's like such a short blip in the span of time. But 1,000 generations, and then he says, go back 1,000 more generations. It's like 2,000 dads, that I have,
Right,
and
right,
then he
right.
said, and now go back 5,000 generations. That's how long we've been sitting around a fire together. I
That's like understanding what $1 billion is, you know? Yeah.
mean, exactly. So all to say, when you say like the remembrance in our bones, I mean, of
Of
course,
course. Yeah,
So
that was always my word is like, well, obviously, like, obviously this works. And obviously, people, again, like Aaron said, is we have people come back and they're like, oh, yeah, this was just like the most natural thing. And that family whose 21-year-old was killed in a car accident, they were like, we don't know what to do. Like, can we call you anytime? And I was like, of course. Guess who didn't call me for 48 hours? Because they knew exactly what to and their community showed up
amazing.
for them. And like the only thing that the mom was concerned about was the ice, and she was fine. Like she never had to call me to ask a question again after I showed her the one time. And yeah, again, they were just like, This was so beautiful. I had no idea. They were a native family, so they drummed for 24 hours. They burned sage. Again, not realizing that this is always available to every single one of us. And I mean, I think that that's the hardest part. So for our last question, which is probably one of the biggest questions that there is, what how would you tell all of us and all of our members, how do we get this message out? And how do we share these stories? I know Ethan's story
Mm.
is great, and we can say, go buy this movie and watch it. But what do you recommend?
Hmm. I think it comes back to that question of what is yours to do.
Mhm.
I think being in this community and seeing how each individual brings their own unique gifts, and that one person knows the power of this work and the importance of it. And if that one person goes and talks about it and, the ripple effect, I think that's how we're going to really see a cultural shift. Um, but just keep doing you and keep, I think the community aspect is the next rendition of it, of this work.
I
And I think,
agree, the
yeah,
community aspect, because it's like there's been these, these renegades wanting to do it, but it's relatively few among the masses. And now all of these people are coming to learn, as evidenced by your work and by Death School, and that's great, but we're still kind of like islands. So how can we link up more? And CCLD is a great model for how we
yeah,
can, but I think on a larger scale, that might be kind of the next thing we need to figure out.
yeah, we're looking at faith communities, like can we empower faith communities to start taking care of their own and say yes to the strangers, seemingly like, again, even if we know one another, we may still be strangers because we haven't really known one another and like been vulnerable with one another and allowed people in. So what if we started doing that in those all the different communities we're in? Like that could have a huge impact.
Yeah,
So,
right. Like, where are you planted? Do it right there.
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, faith
yeah,
communities make a lot of sense.
yeah, they do.
And
So
I
we'll
always
see.
say when you work at the end of life, it's a ripple effect to life. How could it not be when these people get to be present in this sacredness and get to see the beauty of it? How do you not live a fuller and more beautiful life after receiving that gift? And so to think about it that way too, it's not just going to
Hmm.
change end of life, it's going to change life,
Right.
right?
Yeah, that's my prayer. I see how if you don't have a community to go back to, so like my mom, vulnerably I'm sharing, but the grief is so intense.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a community like this wherever you are, or you're not open to it because of so I don't know how to heal that piece, but yeah, we'll keep doing our best
That's
to
the life
support.
piece, though,
It's
right?
the
Like,
life
that's the
piece. It
reflection of
is.
why we have to live richly to create that
Yes.
community. It's a
Yeah.
blessing for someone to show up somewhere like CCLD or to have a really good doula that can provide that, foster that. But really, it's like we have to each do that with our lives so that
That's
it's
the
there
conscious
at our
living piece.
deaths. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yes, that feels true. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Hmm.
so much.
This has been great. Yes. Yes, read the chat, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you,
Oh, thank you,
Tiffany.
Tiffany. Appreciate you.
So we'll have it in the link if it didn't already, the website so that people can go visit, learn more about the Omega Home Network. Maybe some of you have spare homes that you're just like, oh, that's what I should do with it. Great. Or maybe you know people now who you're like, I know people who would invest in this. I think that that's going to be, Colorado doesn't have one. Like, that's so wild to me that the closest one is New Mexico. And I'm just like,
Wow.
how are we not building more of these?
Mm.
So
Hmm.
anyways,
Money is
Yeah.
how, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
All
think
right,
it's
everyone.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
your
All
time
right.
today. Hope wishing peace for
Absolutely. Good
everyone
to
as we go into this next kind of big week.
holiday season.
blessings. Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye. Till next
Bye.
time.